Hey there, I'm Darlena, and here's the deal. I'm 35, a journalist for a major news network, and I've always had a knack for sniffing out stories. But no amount of investigative skill could have prepared me for the curveball life threw my way. It all started 3 years ago. Back then, I was living the dream, great career, and I was married to Jake, a dreamy marine biologist. We were that couple everyone loved to hate. Babe, guess what? Jake had said one morning, bounding into the kitchen, his eyes bright with excitement. I got the grant for the deep-sea expedition. I was so proud of him, so thrilled. If only I'd known. 2 months into his expedition, I got the call that shattered my world. Jake's ship had gone down in a storm, no survivors. I remember collapsing, the phone slipping from my hand. Hours later, my best friend Megan found me like that. "Oh my God, Dar," she cried, rushing over to hold me as I sobbed uncontrollably. "He's gone, Meg," I whispered. "Jake's gone." The months that followed were a blur of grief. Jake's brother, Tom, became my rock. "He'd want you to keep living, Balina," Tom would say, his eyes filled with sadness but pushing me to move forward. Even Claire, Jake's ex from college, reached out, offering her sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Darlena. Jake was one of the good ones." Eventually, I dragged myself back to work. My editor, David, started me off slow. "Take your time, Darlena. You'll get back to the hard-hitting stories when you're ready." But I threw myself into work, seeking solace in the one thing that made sense: investigative journalism. Yet something nagged at me. Little details about Jake's death didn't add up: a missing lifeboat, a distress signal that didn't match the ship's equipment. "You're obsessing, Dar," Megan would say, her voice soft but firm. "You need to let him go." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just clinging to hope. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. 3 years passed. I was at my desk, working on a story about financial fraud, when David handed me a new assignment: insurance scams. "It's a goldmine of human interest stories," he said. "Dive in." I was knee-deep in research when it happened. My eyes were glazed over from hours of footage and interviews when something in the background of a travel show caught my attention. A flash of a familiar face. My heart stopped. It couldn't be. I rewound the footage, slowing it down. There, clear as day, was Jake, my Jake, alive, sipping a cocktail on a sun-drenched beach. "This is insane," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. I wasn't seeing things. I called Megan, my voice shaking. "Meg, you need to come over. Now." When she arrived, I showed her the footage. Her eyes widened in shock. "Holy Dar, that's Jake. But it can't be. He's dead. We had a funeral. You scattered his ashes." Megan grabbed my hand. "We need to look into this. If there's even a chance." We dug deeper. The travel show was recent, filmed just a few months ago. Jake was alive. He faked his death. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Why? Why would he do this? I whispered, feeling sick. More digging revealed the unthinkable. Jake was living in the Maldives, and he wasn't alone. In photo after photo, there he was, his arm around Claire, his ex-girlfriend, laughing, happy. While I was grieving, he was living it up with her. Megan's face was grim. "You need to confront Tom. If anyone knows the truth, it's him." I cornered Tom at his office. His face went pale the moment he saw me. "Darlena, what's going on?" "Cut the crap, Tom," I snapped, slamming my hand on his desk. "I know Jake's alive. I know about him and Claire." His eyes darted nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." I was shaking now. "I saw him, Tom. On a travel show in the Maldives with Claire." Tom slumped in his chair, defeated. "I didn't know at first. I swear. But Jake contacted me about a year ago. He made me promise not to say anything. He said it was complicated." "Complicated?" I let out a bitter laugh. "I warned him, Tom. I cried myself to sleep for months." Tom reached for me, his voice soft. "I'm so sorry, Darlena. I wanted to tell you, but you chose your lying, cheating brother over me? Over the truth?" My voice cracked as I stared at Tom, disbelief giving way to a rising storm of anger. Without waiting for his answer, I turned and stormed out, my mind spinning. Everything I thought I knew about the man I loved, the life we'd built, the future we had planned was gone, erased in an instant. Back home, I stood in front of the evidence we gathered: photos, videos, financial records. It was all there, mocking me. What are you going to do? Megan asked quietly, her voice full of concern. I took a deep breath, feeling a fire ignite deep inside me. I'm going to find out exactly what happened, and then I'm going to make them pay. I stared at Jake's face in a recent photo, his arm wrapped around Claire. The grief, the pain, and the confusion all hardened into something else. A cold, unshakable determination. Game on, Jake, I whispered. You have no idea what's coming. From that moment, I threw myself into the investigation with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every waking moment was consumed with digging, researching, connecting the dots. My living room turned into a chaotic crime scene board, photos, documents, and sticky notes covering every available surface. Darlena, you need to sleep, Megan urged, her eyes full of worry. I waved her off. Sleep is for people who haven't been betrayed by their dead husbands. Piece by piece, it all began to make sense. I uncovered a massive life insurance payout, $2 million, collected just after Jake's supposed death. The money had been funneled through offshore accounts, finally landing in a bank in the Maldives. Look at this, I said, pointing to a document. Claire quit her job a week before Jake's ship went down. She knew. She was in on it from the start. But what gutted me most was discovering Tom's involvement. I found emails between him and Jake, dated months before the staged death, where they discussed the plan. Tom had helped orchestrate the whole thing. That lying bastard, I muttered through clenched teeth. He looked me in the eye at the funeral. He held me while I cried. I needed to flush them out, to make them panic and slip up. That's when the idea struck. Megan, I need a favor, I said, turning to her. Can you leak a story? Make it seem like the authorities are closing in on a big insurance fraud case. Don't name names, but make sure it's clear it involves a faked death at sea. Megan grinned. Consider it done. The effect was immediate. Jake made a frantic call to Tom, which I managed to record using a bug I planted in Tom's office. They're onto us, Tom. Jake's voice crackled with panic. We need to move the money now. Calm down, Tom replied, though his voice wavered. It might not be about us. Don't be naive. Jake snapped. It's too specific. I smiled grimly, listening to their desperation. Got you, you bastards. Over the next few days, I watched as they scrambled, making mistake after mistake. Jake liquidated accounts, leaving a clear paper trail. Claire booked flights under an alias, but I traced them with ease. Everything was falling into place. I compiled bank records, travel documents, emails, and phone calls into a damning pile of evidence. A story of deceit and betrayal that spanned continents. As I organized the final pieces, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. This was it, the final nail in the coffin of my marriage and a life I thought I had. Are you sure you want to do this? Megan asked, watching me work. I nodded, my jaw set in determination. They took everything from me, Meg. My trust, my love, years of my life. It's time they faced the consequences. My gaze drifted to a photo of Jake and me on our wedding day, still sitting on my desk. With a decisive motion, I turned it face down. No more tears, I thought. No more grief. It's time for justice. I took a deep breath and hit send. My anonymous tip, along with a mountain of evidence, was now in the hands of the insurance company and the financial authorities. There was no turning back. Within days, the news exploded. Massive insurance fraud uncovered in tropical paradise, the headlines screamed. I watched as Jake and Claire's world unraveled. Their accounts were frozen, their assets seized. Paradise lost. Tom wasn't spared either. His law firm suspended him pending an investigation. His carefully crafted reputation was crumbling, just like the rest of their lives. It was time for the final confrontation. I set up a video call, my heart pounding as Jake's face appeared on the screen. He looked canned, stress had etched new lines around his eyes. Darlena, what's going on? Have you seen the news? I smiled coldly. Oh, I've seen it, Jake. In fact, I broke it. His face went pale. What? What are you talking about? Cut the act. I know everything. The faked death, the insurance scam, Claire, Tom's involvement, all of it. Jake's facade crumbled. Dar, please, I can explain. I never meant to hurt you. I was in trouble. I needed a way out. Please, you have to forgive me. I laughed bitterly. Forgive you? For letting me think you were dead? For watching me grieve while you lived it up with your ex? Not a chance in hell, Jake. But we were happy once, weren't we? Don't you remember all those plans we made? I remember a lie I said, cutting him off. Every moment, every promise, it was all based on deception. You're not the man I thought I married. That man never existed. Jake's eyes filled with tears. Darina, please, I still love you. We can start over. No, Jake, we can't. Goodbye. I ended the call feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. It was over, really, truly over. The story was too big to ignore. With my editor's blessing, I turned my investigation into a groundbreaking series on complex fraud. It was raw, personal, and it struck a nerve with the public. Suddenly, I was the story. Talk shows, podcasts, conferences, everyone wanted to hear from the journalist who had unraveled her own husband's lies. My career soared as I became a respected voice in investigative journalism. A year later, I stood on stage, accepting a prestigious award for my fraud investigation series. The lights were bright, the applause thunderous, but all I could think about was the journey that had brought me here. This award, I said into the microphone, my voice steady, is for every person who's been betrayed, who's had to rebuild their life from the ashes of deception. Your truth matters. Your story matters. And let me tell you, there's life after betrayal. There's strength in surviving. As I left the stage, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Jake and Claire had been sentenced. They were facing years in prison. Tom had avoided jail time, but he'd been disbarred. His reputation, in tatters. Later that night, I sat in my new apartment, looking out over the city lights. So much had changed in a year. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it had been overshadowed by my success and newfound purpose. My laptop sat open, a blank document staring back at me, the beginnings of a book about my experience, about healing from betrayal. I began to type. I thought I was living a love story. Turns out, it was a mystery. This is how I solved it. As the words flowed, a sense of peace washed over me. I had survived, no more than that. I had thrived. Jake, Claire, Tom, they had tried to break me, but instead, they had forged me into something stronger. Megan called, her voice excited. Dare, I just heard about the book deal. This is huge. I smiled. Thanks, Meg. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Please, he scoffed, you're a force of nature, Darina. I just give you a little push now and then. After we hung up, I stood by the window, watching the city below. A year ago, I thought my life was over. Now I realized it was just beginning. I had a voice now, a platform. I could help others who had been deceived, show them there was light at the end of the tunnel. My pain had become my purpose. Watch out, world, I whispered to my reflection. Darina 2.0 was just getting started. I turned back to my laptop, ready to pour more of my story onto the page. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. No more shadows. No more lies. Just the truth and the strength to face whatever came next. The future was bright, and it was all mine. That's a wrap on Darina's journey. Now it's your turn. Was Darina justified in exposing Jake's fraud so publicly, or should she have handled it privately,